I feel like I spend like the idea was to get as free, not only in terms of our life situation, but creatively too,
Yeah.
And to make music. So I made 2 albums this year. One that came out earlier that I made in Istanbul, with the producer Unjust, that like we emailed stuff to each other. We should have been using the FYI app. But I was in Istanbul, not concerned with who listens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thinking like and then we ended up making an album that we really loved. And he's an animator illustrator, so it's like, oh, we're gonna have videos for everything. And he made this big, like, intense, like, booklet and packaging and everything. So we were thinking, like, man, let's actually try to get so that people know about this. And so we put a lot of time, energy, and money into it, and we got nothing in response. Like, I spent as much as I was with the Rhymesayers record label for 20-something years, which in the underground world, they're like the Motown of underground independent hip hop music. They make music and their presentation, they just like polish it up a little bit.
It's a well-oiled machine in that scope of the music business and industry.
Yeah. And they're able to, but the amount of money that I spent was on par with what they spend.
Yeah.
And I hired the same publicity people and got it manufactured in the same places and all this stuff. And even after putting all of that into it, and I was doing it all with my own money.
Yeah.
Me and my partner, BK1. We put our own money up for it, and we also were supposed to have a distribution partner. The distribution partner backed out after October 7th because Unjust, who's a partner on the project, is a radically anti-Zionist Jewish guy who married an anti-Zionist Jewish woman. And so we added a song at the last minute that was like, something about what's going on in Palestine. And so the distributor backed out and didn't tell us that they were doing that. So we thought we were going to have this partner that was going to put money into it and, time and everything into distributing, and they just didn't do that. Hired a publicist that cost a lot of money. That this was the same person that got me in Rolling Stone and all the places where I typically would have been. And he said by name, so-and-so at this publication loves you. This person loves you. This person. Because he's worked my stuff before.
Sure.
And he's like, we're going to have no problem. Like, this is an amazing project. It's an amazing story. Not one. He didn't get me not one. 0. I don't mean it went from Rolling Stone to like smaller blogs. I mean, nothing.
And it's interesting because,
I don't want to cut you off, but for everybody watching this, I want people to understand this. Watch this. Although he got you nothing, did you still have to pay him?
Yeah.
That part?
Yeah.
That part is like, it's already one thing to be like, man, you got my hopes up and you said all this, and it's not like I'm a newbie, you heard me? Like, I'm Brother Ali. So come on, man, give me something. Like, people know me, people love me. Not only did you not give me anything, but the way the structure is like, I still had to pay you.
You're basically paying a publicist to try. It's not actually...
Chappelle said one time, I don't get paid by how good I do. I'm like Evel Knievel. I get paid for the attempt. And I mean, that's what.
But it's first of all, it's a fantastic record. I definitely encourage anybody who hasn't checked it out to check it out.
So we sat with you and Grouch the other day.
Yeah.
And Grouch was like, that's my favorite album of the year. And I was just
great Grouch impression.
Man, the fact that Grouch thinks that, I'm like, apparently that's what I did it for.
But it's interesting because you could, like, I could envision somebody could make the argument, like, yeah, well, what were you, like, the expectations might need to be tempered because you were with a juggernaut that was Rhymesayers. Now you're doing it on your own. Yeah. But what strikes me as interesting is that the publicist said that they were talking to these people, that, this person at Rolling Stone is super into it. The differentiation of what label was distributing it, I feel like would not necessarily impact them in terms of.
So with this new
coverage.
project that we're partnering with Mellow Music.
Right. How'd you link with Mellow?
Merce.
This episode brought to you by Merce.
And every other episode.
Yeah, and every other episode.
Yeah. So, but no, Merce suggested it. Had a conversation with Mellow, who runs the label. And it was just, everything he said, it all resonated with me perfectly.
What did he say?
Just when he was talking about what the music means and, the way he approaches business and, we went in with the album was done. So we financed the album, mixed, mastered. B Plus did the photos, who was there the other night.
Yeah.
Legendary guy, flew to Istanbul to do the photos.
Wow.
Brent Rollins did the layout.
Woo.
Another legend. We paid for all this ourselves.
We were basically serving up an incredible project here.
And so I had me and BK had a very specific, this is what we want from you, and this is what we think you should get.
Okay.
And Mike at Mellow Music was like, perfect.
Wow.
No disagreement, no whatever. He sent an agreement where he just basically wrote up in regular language what we talked about. Mm-hmm. We had a lawyer look at it, but it was like, the lawyer is like, there's nothing here where this person's trying to trick you into anything. Like, your conversation is literally exactly what it is, which is beautiful. So he starts trying to market it, and he said, you have enemies somewhere. He said, I reached out to the individuals publicists that I usually work with. They all love you. They're very excited. They're so happy you're working with Ant again. And then each one of them went and talked to their boss and came back and said, I'm not allowed to work on this.
Not allowed. Wow.
And so sometimes it's like, when somebody threatens you, it's like, I've had my life threatened for trying to make peace between artists. We talked openly on the podcast about, I tried to make peace between Rakim and Tech Nine. And Chris Calico didn't even know my story. He just said, you don't even know, but the first time I saw you, I was about to knock your head off. You know what I mean? But he was like, then I got around you and I realized, like, no, he's not, he's trying to make peace.
Sure.
But man, sometimes you get confirmations because it's so insidious and so sneaky. Nobody tells you I'm boycotting you, I'm shadow banning you, I'm whatever. But sometimes just so the confirmation actually feels good sometimes.
Right.
They're like, oh yeah, okay. So when I did Conan O'Brien, I was supposed to do this tour with Gym Class Heroes that was sponsored by Verizon Wireless. It was going to be a big deal. They're going to pay me a lot.
Yeah.
And that's when I was being courted by the music industry, pre-Macklemore. They were wondering, would me or Slug, or they really wanted Slug to be Macklemore before Macklemore, and he chose not to do it.
Sure.
With me, they were kind of like, I wonder if this could be a thing. And I'm like, here's Uncle Sam, goddamn. And they're like, no, that's not a thing. You know what I'm saying? But after we did Uncle Sam on Conan, we got a call from them. It was just like, hey, we can't do this.
So
Fox News went after them. Yeah. But they told us straight up,
right,
it's because of this song, we can't do that. Fox News went after them for Verizon because they were sponsoring a tour that Akon was on. And Akon was dancing crazy on some girl that ended up being underage and the daughter of the president of Belize or something like that. So they told us straight up, we have to uninvite you from the tour. This is why. It's not that we think that, but Fox News is going to come after us. So sometimes you get confirmation. Most of the time you don't. And when you do, there's something oddly satisfying about just don't lie to me.
Right. Just tell me what it is.
Yeah. Just tell me hey, you're talking about Palestine and whatever. I'm worried that people might see me a certain way. And so we're not going to work with you, So in terms of now, my thing is the big struggle now with everybody, and especially for people in my position, and after is there is a group of people that we know for sure are interested in what we do. How do we just let them know that what we're doing is even happening?
Right, breaking through an algorithm, breaking through all of these systems that
and Yasiin Bey called it. Yasiin is always Yasiin is that guy that's just beautifully and strangely and oddly saying stuff, and people are like, oh, that's just Yasiin being eccentric. But
right.
Then you look at it 10 years later, it's like, no, he was right. When social media came along and streaming services came along and promised they were going to be we're going to circumvent the gatekeepers. He said, they're just the new gatekeepers. They're just going to replace the gatekeepers. And they're going to rob us and they're going to, he said all of this when all this stuff happened. He just got on Instagram a year ago.
Right.
And if it's up to him, his music won't be on streaming services.
Right.
And it's frustrating because those have become the only ways to access stuff now. But his whole thing is man, we're not doing this to be famous. We're doing this to be free. We're doing this to say what we want to say in the way we want to say it. And so for Yasiin, it's he loves art, so he'll get with an artist, do an art gallery thing, and the people that go to the art gallery, you listen to the music.
Right.
You know. So, so to me, that is the industry now. How do I just get the people that already want to hear me just to be aware that I'm still inspired? I still want to go on tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, man, like I feel better and younger than I ever felt because of the way that I live, the way that, because I'm also inspired by Yasiin is another main connector. Yeah. Like Merce and Yasiin are very similar guys where like there's a whole world. So Yasiin Bey told me years ago, like you're not going to be happy as long as you live in America. You're bigger than America. You have to be outside America. So we moved to Istanbul 4 years ago, and I live the life that I want to live. I make the art that I want to make. I'm with the people that I want to be with. My expenses aren't as high. My wife is not a materialistic, high maintenance woman, even though she's really fine and could have been that if she wanted to be. You know what I'm saying? So all I care about now, and it takes up the majority of my doggone day. And I hate that. I resent the fact that I got to make content. I got to think about what's going to penetrate algorithms. I got to try to get your email address somehow. I got to, I invite people. I have all these amazing people on my podcast. It's so hard to get 4,000 people to listen to it, but 35,000 subscribed on YouTube. Why is it so hard to get 1,000 or 2 to even know it happened? 500,000 subscribed on social media. Why is it so hard to get 1,000 likes on something? You know what I mean? Why? Like,
because you don't actually own the tools. You're using the tools, and that is, to Yasiin's point, sort of the lie or the trick that we all fell for, where we were like, oh, cool, this will be a new alternative to what was an antiquated system. It's like, you can connect directly to people, you're cutting out the middleman, but then these devices became the middleman.
Yeah. And, and they've in one way or another, they're not going to stop until so I'll just be super real. Like I never said this in public, but during the Love and Service album, I was talking overtly about Palestine all the time. And so Jeremy Scahill, who's a great journalist, he's one of the guys that started The Intercept, and Amr Rahman, the comedian, who's also a journalist, they looked at my social media. They're like, you are intensely shadow banned. Like the followers you have versus the engagement you have. And so they told me, try to don't post anything for a month. When you come back, just do your face, just talking about your music, and then kind of ease back into talking about stuff. And I saw my engagement go back to where it was before. And since then, I have not said a word about Palestine on social media.